I myself, the producer of this podcast, is not eligible to diagnose anyone with a mental health disorder. This podcast is purely for artists discussing the mental health hurdles they struggle with on a daily basis. Enjoy. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Where's My Mind, a podcast about mental health in the arts. I have writer, one-time stand-up comedian, two-time stand-up comedian, hopefully more, but mainly you are, you're a writer. I think that would be your first and foremost, like what your calling card is, because you've written a handful of screenplays that have gotten into festivals that have won awards. You know, you're working on a project we don't have to talk about. It's a big project where it's probably the most, would you say it's the most intense writing project you've had to endure so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done, you do pre-production when you do writing projects, but I've never had to read, like 8 books on a subject and do all kinds of other sifting through notes and emails, and
that's nuts.
It's a lot.
Hopefully
by the time this episode drops.
Yeah, well,
so
we
will
can
the
talk
book.
about it. Yeah. But yeah, no, we have Steve Hanisch on. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing good. This is a little weird. This is weird for me right now. Different. We knew each other in high school.
Yeah.
But we weren't really it's weird how high school is, where it's like for me anyway, I had so many different groups of friends where
a lot of cliques. I think I was a middle person. Like, I had some cooler friends, some not cooler friends.
I was exactly like that.
You know.
I had friends who were on the basketball team. I had friends who did drugs in the woods. I had friends who were afraid of the word weed.
That's a great part about high school, is you kind of learn who you are, right?
Yeah,
you're into a little bit of everything.
And then you kind of, whatever personality.
I like little struggles. I like alcohol, but I also like sports. I like being active. I like being healthy, and then I also like destroying myself.
The only thing I wish I did in high school was actually theater. Our friend that we've met through Charlie Cathcart, he actually asked, he like pushed me to like, you should really audition, try out, and I just didn't have the confidence, because I was like, because then I thought I was an athlete, but I was like, basketball players, then I'm not going to do that. And then I went to one of his plays, and he completely crushed it. He was great. Adam Rosowski, Keith McDonald. I remember them, just all three of them, like specifically just crushing.
Yeah, I remember them doing improv stuff too.
Yes,
and it was really amazing.
And I was like, man, like that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I really didn't tap into my artistic personality or in the arts until I was about like 23. What about you? When did you like when you were in high school, did you always know you wanted to go like to school for writing and acting? Or
no, when I was younger, I would just write like stories because I enjoyed creating worlds and just writing, but I didn't really actively pursue that until I was almost done with my psychology degree, and then I changed course. Yeah. I changed course. How
was that?
Mike
what did
and
your
I,
parents
Mike Kroll
think?
and I actually were like wanted to do something creative. So we wrote a screenplay that was
Mike Kroll.
Terrible.
Mike Kroll writes?
Yeah. Well,
or wanted to?
He helped me write that one.
Nice.
But it was not any good. But after that, it was kind of like he moved on to other things. And I was kind of starstruck. I was like, I really, really like this. So I kept on doing that, and then explored everything.
A lot of people I know in the film world, in Jersey anyway, went to Ramapo.
Yeah, a lot of people went to Ramapo.
And it's everyone who's gone to Ramapo or like Jess Vasquez, Jess Arena, like y'all are like some of the best artists I've ever worked with.
Thank you.
So I think Ramapo,
and yes, agreed.
I think Ramapo doesn't get enough credit for, I guess, whatever they're producing up there, because that, like, you guys are really like, everyone who's come from there, I've been thoroughly impressed.
Yeah, I'm sure every college has those few great professors and departments, but Ramapo for sure had a couple that were really, really great and really influential.
You said you had a mentor?
Neil Scott was one. He was really amazing, and I consider him my mentor, Tobin Addington. He's a great screenwriter in his own right. That's what he does for a living now. He was able to have enough work to do that. He moved back to Montana, where he's from. He does that. He kind of goes to LA when he needs to, does whatever.
Wow.
But he was extremely helpful and influential in my writing. I had never, because you can never, you know me, I like to make people, like, I'm introverted, but at a party or something, I like to make people laugh, because that's like kind of.
Are you an introvert though? Like, do you?
I definitely am. There's actually the last time when we were hanging out for Jess's 30th birthday celebration. Your dad at one point towards the end of the night I was quiet all of a sudden. He's like, "You're quiet. What's going on?" I was like, "No, I'm an introvert and I'm done with you people. Like my energy's spent." But
So
for
I guess
doing
maybe
that, so I would always try to make people laugh in class or whatever, like especially with screenwriting, because that was so easy. You would write whatever you wanted to on the page, and then you'd pick roles and you would have people read it, and it was incredible. I love that experience. But Tobin was the first person who was like, "Yeah, this is funny, but like, what are you trying to say?"
Yeah.
And I was like, I never thought of it like that. I just want to make people laugh. He's like, "It's great, but
But
joke doesn't really matter if the story doesn't mean
there's
anything."
nothing behind it.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of really eye-opening for me. So started crafting what would become Viacom Run Through the Jungle now. That's where that started, because I just wanted to write a parody movie. And he was like, "Great, but even parody movies say something."
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, okay. So when you start editing, it's like you got to cut jokes because story's more important.
Yeah, no, that's actually that's really good advice, because I don't.
And it hurts because you got
It
some
does.
funny jokes,
Yeah.
but it's like,
But if they don't make sense, like
it's like Anchorman 2, like funny movie, but it's a collection of skits.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't actually hold up as a movie. Like
Yeah,
there's
I
no
agree.
narrative, you know?
Yeah, no, that actually.
So you
And
should
there's
compare that to the first one. First Anchorman, amazing. Second
Yeah.
one's just a bunch of funny scenes. It's not a coherent movie.
But yeah, no, there's situations where you watch it, it's funny, and then you go back and you find out maybe that that was a real life thing, and you're like, holy shit, I guess it's it being more real life.
It's going to turn into the Tobin Addington plug fest, but he also he dislikes Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker. And I remember that was because especially when you're in college and you're creative.
2008.
When I graduated in 2013, because I spent extra time in college.
So I started late. Yeah,
I spent
I started
4 years in a psychology degree that only turned into a minor, and then I transitioned.
I started college when I was 22. I was really late. So yeah,
especially like going through the creative schooling like that, like there's certain movies that's kind of like really popular to love, and it's maybe the first time you saw that style. So like Memento is one of those movies, and then at the time Christopher Nolan had already had a bunch of big movies come out that were his. Inception, he had started the Dark Knight stuff, like all that. So it was like blasphemous to hate Christopher Nolan, and he's like, well, no, it's like here's why. He would explain his arguments, and it's kind of like, that's really brilliant. Like, I didn't know you were allowed to disagree with anything of a certain creative nature, because even in college, in the creative field, there's certain cliques just like anywhere else, and there's certain people that you don't get along with, and there's certain things they like that you go like, yeah, but like everybody loves those things, and you'd be like, no, it's okay to not love what everyone else loves.
I think there's a difference between being a hipster and not liking stuff, and then being like just not being a fan of it. And we jokingly go through all this all the time. Like your wife and my wife are always on my ass about not watching or liking Game of Thrones. It's just because the first few times I've watched it, it was probably the setting I was watching it in, but it just didn't like grab me, right?
Which makes me so mad, because you're now on the right side of history about hating what Game of Thrones turned into, which pisses me off.
Jess has no like desire. Well, I don't think it has any desire, but like I'm like, we should try like these shows like Barry, Breaking Bad, and I just see the blank expression on her face, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna go at these alone again. But like, yeah, like you and I, like you walked in today and you're like, I need you to explain to me why you liked the Batman. So there's always going to be that like I'm not going to be like, well, Steve, you're wrong for not liking it. Like you make every valid point as to why you like or don't like something, to the point where I wouldn't say you persuade my mind. Like you just make it very clear, and you bring up things that I guess I wasn't thinking about. So I can totally understand. Like you're like, I compare it to like when someone says they don't like my project, tell me why. Or like you didn't find my project that entertaining, or the script entertaining. Tell me why. Don't just say you don't like it for not liking it.
I think that's a big thing. I think it only maybe exists in the creative field, where constructive criticism is a really big part of your introduction to working on film, screenplays, all this kind of stuff. Because even the first classes, like Film 101, you're working on stuff and you have to show it to everybody. And then everybody has to say a good and a bad thing or like explain your position about it. So it's a very vulnerable place you're in very quickly. And you're just learning to do this shit. Like I looked at some of my like stuff I filmed like my first year doing film stuff, and it's horrendous. Like I understand the ideas behind it, but it was not good. And then you got to show that to everybody, and you got to be vulnerable, and you got to be receptive to what people are saying. And then you take that, you internalize it, and you can either use it or don't use it, and you can figure out how to craft something. I don't think that really exists in other fields. Like everything else seems like there's a pretty cut and dry way of approaching the business or psychology, for example. Like there's everybody has their own individual case, but there's certain ways to handle it, and there's certain ways to not. Doing something creative is like it's like watching TV today. It's a problem because there are so many options.
Yeah,
there's no right avenue to go down.
Yeah,
I think that was a big part of it, especially in comedy.
Yeah, and forget
it. That's so objective.
Yeah, and that there's no
subjective.
There's no what the fuck was it? Yeah, I mean like what am I trying to say? There's this thing like. Trying to word it correctly to make it sound good. You know, as artists, like there is a playbook, quote unquote, but there really isn't. And I've used this example all the time. I think the 180 rule is filming wise. You know, if you don't know what it is, it means the camera has to be on the same side of the character talking. It's more in depth than that, but essentially that's what it is. I think the 180 rule is kind of bullshit because I see all my filmmakers I love break it constantly. And it's not even like, and I always go back to the car chase scene in The Dark Knight in the bridge.
Yeah.
How many like, just the different like Nolan cutting from like a noisy ass like exterior shot of the two cars to inside the car where it's quiet to the like he was cutting and the sound designing. It made you feel chaotic because that's what it was.
Yeah.
So why can I watch that, say like that's beautiful, and then I have to go back and I fail a project because I broke the 180 rule?
Right.
You know,
yeah.
I think art is, yes, you have to teach art, you know, in school, or you don't have to. You can teach art in school, and like you can teach it the way you might think it is, like your teacher, your mentor. But I don't want someone to say you have to film it the 180 rule when I see like Nolan and Scorsese break it.
I don't necessarily mind being taught that way because what's behind it is there has to be a reason for it to be broken. And if you just have a bunch of college kids going like rules don't matter, I'm going to make what I want to make, then you're just going to have this
but I feel like art's
confusing
that way too.
collection of
I feel like
kids trying to run before they can walk.
True. But I feel like there's no rules with art. Like there really isn't.
There's not, but there's, it's like anything else. Like you got to build a foundation of learning. Like here's why the 180-degree rule exists. It's because when you're watching something and you flip that around, there's an inherent sense of confusion within the scene, and you're going to confuse your audience.
Yeah.
So it exists so audiences can subconsciously remain intact and have their suspension of disbelief remain intact.
Yeah.
That's why it's there. So if you're going to break that for a chaotic chase scene,
or anything,
go ahead, but here's why it's supposed to be in place. It's kind of like learning rules.
No, yeah, definitely.
Here's why multiplication exists. Here's why division is the way it is.
Exactly.
Like,
it's a basic concept, rule, but like
once you understand the meat of it, why it's there, then you can go ahead and break it. But you got to know why it exists in the first place. If you're trying to fuck your audience over, like at least know what rules you're breaking.
Like I keep saying in these episodes, I know I'm breaking the fourth wall here, but I send these episodes, out to people who want to be on the podcast, and they choose what they'd like to discuss. And the first episode what I would like to talk about is the effects of a 9-to-5 job, or a job in general. It doesn't have to be 9 to 5, if you work bartending, retail, whatever the fuck. But it's from the mind of an artist, and how artists working 9 to 5, how tough or easy it can be. But first I'd like to ask you if I've asked everyone this about therapy, if they've gone to therapy, or are they currently in therapy, or their thoughts on therapy. Would you like to speak on that, or?
Yes, and yes.
Okay.
I've been to therapy previously. I'm currently in therapy now, and I believe everyone should be in therapy. It's, in my opinion, it's just like going to the dentist every 6 months. Like there's certain things you should be doing to take care of your body, right? Not that I adhere to all of those things, as I struggle to breathe in these jeans right now. But therapy is
why are
a
you wearing
way
jeans
to
on a Sunday?
um
Laundry day.
yeah. Because I didn't feel like breaking in a new pair on a Sunday.
That's great.
That's what Monday's for.
That's great. But no, yeah.
It's a way to clear the cobwebs. It's been extremely helpful to just have an objective third party, even if you don't feel like you need it. It's something that's insanely helpful, because you get stuck in your own kind of horse blinders. This is what I'm worried about. This is what I'm focusing on, and then someone who is professionally trained to identify certain things can kind of open your eyes to certain behaviors, or why you're thinking the way you're thinking, or how to think through things, exercises to practice, all kinds of stuff. Like, a very simple thing was, I remember, like, for me, I've always commuted like a lot, like throughout college, work. Like, I've always had a hell of a commute, wherever I was.
Yeah.
And one of the things that always got me through that was a comedy show, Opie and Anthony. And then their many iterations after that have always been tremendously just incredible for me. They kept switching time slots around, and I work 7 to 3, so I'm early. And I remember them not being on the air when I was driving into certain places, and how that was affecting me, because I hate FM radio.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. It's boring. It's stupid. It's regulations out the ass. And my therapist was like, why don't you just listen on demand? And I was like, I never thought of that. And let me tell you what, it helped me. So I'm a day behind, but hell, I can listen to my show.
Yeah, I mean, and
just certain things like that. Like, everybody that goes to therapy probably goes for a reason, like whatever it is. When you first start going, for me, I had a panic attack, I had a mental breakdown, and I had never experienced anything like that before. I was like, I should probably do something about that.
Can you go into like what,
sure.
what it was? 'Cause I don't know if I've ever.
My whole thing about it is, like, if this can help anybody, I'm happy to speak on it.
Okay.
Like, Drew Carson did a mental health documentary. He filmed completely over Zoom calls and put it all together. It was incredible to hear some of the stories. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be open for it. If it can help anybody, I'd be happy to, because I'm happy we're living in the age we live in, where mental health awareness is such a prevalent thing in our society.
And men are talking about it.
But it's still kind of, I feel like it still has a stigma, and maybe it's just because it's when we were raised kind of
and
a
it's
thing.
new. It's still new.
Feels new.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had started a job that I thought was going to be a good job for me. Ended up being a terrible place to work. I was only there for 1.5 years, but the damage that did to my psyche was still lasting. I worked for a very terrible, toxic person, who in turn worked for a toxic person. It was just kind of like a shit rolls downhill kind of a thing. So I was on the blunt end of the stick every single day, every single hour of my 8-hour shifts. It was a really terrible experience. And at the same time, I had met Carrie. Our relationship was moving along very well. We got engaged. We were planning to get married, which ended up happening. Mm-hmm. I don't want to make it sound like that fell apart. And like, we bought a house. Like, there was a ton of shit happening. Yeah. And that was the first time Vietcom got accepted into a major format film festival in the Beverly Hills Film Festival.
Nice.
So I was planning to go to that. I was buying a house. I was living in the house, fixing it up. Our wedding was being planned. All the shit was going wrong at work every single day. And then my job got threatened there. And we had just committed to a mortgage. All this stuff was happening. I had a flight planned. I was paying for a hotel room. Like,
did you go to that flight?
No, I couldn't.
I forgot.
I went that night. I went to Carrie's parents' house, because it was like 40 minutes closer to the airport than our house was. Yeah. So and my flight was at like 4 a.m. Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to do that.
Because you got to get there an hour or two early. Yeah.
And I had started using an app called Calm. I think Calm's more prevalent now, but it's like it can help you fall asleep. It can help you meditate. Like, it's really good for everything. I was using that previously. That night, I remember like I have always been a nervous person. I like to plan things out. That's my bloodline. Yeah. Like, we always made fun of my dad for like being nervous at like airports, making sure flights are on time, all that kind of stuff. But like, me and my brother are the exact same way. Yeah. But this was different. Like, I couldn't eat anything. I didn't get 1 ounce of sleep that whole night. I remember laying in the bed, just My heart was racing the whole time. I having sweats. Like, it was bad. Like, Carrie came in and tried to talk me down. Like, I was listening to Calm all night. Never worked. And then the time came for me to go leave the house to my flight, and I made a right instead of a left, and I just went home. I couldn't do it. And then I went home. I kept not sleeping. Tried to cancel things. Only got like partial refunds. And then for the next 4 or 5 days, because I had taken off a certain number of time and it lapsed over a weekend.
Yeah.
I, like, you know me, I'm very comfortable by myself at home with a movie and some fucking waffles and coffee, and I'm happy. I'm in my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what I did for those 4 days.
I remember you going out being like, I'm going to go out to California to the Screen Fest, the Beverly Hills Film Festival. I was like, for a screenplay, for me, I never thought like that's an avenue you can go to a festival for. It's always like, it has to be a short film, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It wasn't playing anywhere, so I thought it would be good to go. I had business cards made up
I remember
to meet, to network. It's Beverly Hills. It's at the Chinese Theater. Like, it would have been really good for my career. And then the next 4 or 5 days, I don't think
Would you say it was due to
the
job?
Sleep.
The job you were working at?
I think there was a lot of things going on, but the job was definitely negative. Like, I had never been in a situation like that previously. Like, I was doing a lot before that. Like, I was working 2 part-time jobs to try to make ends meet, and I was living at home. I basically could pay my own bills, and that was it. So then this next job was like a big step up. Like, finally job. I had real medical coverage. I had a retirement fund that was like, oh, I'm an adult. Like, I have adult things now. So to lose that, to quit, to move on was like not something I ever even considered, because that would be a backslide in my mind.
Yeah.
I didn't consider, like, I'd always been able to handle everything. I was young. I was in my 20s. So after that, it was like, it was really tough.
I didn't realize how young you and Carrie were when you guys started dating.
I know, dude.
Like what, like 24, 25?
Yeah. She was a child,
fucking
bro.
babies, dude. I was with Jess when she was like 23, 24. Yeah, it was
every other day, there's this weird little faculty bathroom that no one ever used because it isn't like our tech wing.
It's a Costanza bathroom.
Essentially. So, and I remember going in there and just turning the lights off and sitting on the toilet, like, you know, with the lid down, like it's my own space.
Oh, I thought the lid was
I mean,
up.
sometimes I, double dip. Well, it would be productive. But I remember having panic attacks in that bathroom, just couldn't see straight, like sweats, everything. We had another closet that we used for tech storage that didn't have any cameras or anything like that. That was like totally separate. We were the only ones with keys to it. I remember going in there. There was roof access from there. I would go up there and just kind of try to get at peace, but it never worked. Like I was in a terrible place. I got some meds from my doctor, but I was like, I don't want to just be... Again, I don't know if that's like the Jim Carrey thing of like, I don't want to sedate myself because then I can't be myself.
I mean, I'm in therapy now, and I told her like, I don't want to take meds, but if it has to come to it, then I will. I'll do it, and I'm trying hard to handle whatever's going on within me, like naturally.
Yeah, I've been on stomach medication for a long time, and that's other medical shit I have to figure out. But like, I remember I was taking meds for anti-anxiety every single night to go to sleep, and every single day during lunch just to be able to get through the day. Like, it was a really bad situation. So I remember being like, I have to find out what's going on. So I went to therapy at first. Didn't last very long. I was only there for a couple sessions because I don't know. I was still really young. I don't know if I still had any of that. I don't know if you want any toxic masculinity, where it's like I can handle my own shit.
Yeah.
And the therapist was great. Like, she was fine. She gave me a couple exercises that I still use to this day, kind of a thing. And that helped me get through long enough. But at the same time, there was a few things that happened at work where I was like, I have to get out of here. And luckily I was able to get out. I remember getting the offer for my current job. And once I had a choice actually for 2 different positions at 2 different places. And I remember laying down on the floor of my man cave and just crying because I was like, I can finally get out of here.
Nice.
And then after that it was like all rainbows and butterflies. Like, I remember after that I was just fucking around.
You
like,
probably thrived.
And the teachers, like, I liked there, so I still helped them, but I there's one story and I wrote like journals to help me through it. And there's one I remember writing and I remember doing it. It was on a break. My boss had gone away and it was just me there. So I could just relax. I could write. I could do whatever I wanted to. He would come back periodically to check on me because he was a fuck. But I remember, so the way that building was laid out was kind of like an H on top of an H. Mm-hmm. Like that's how the building was. So there's 4 stairwells and then a center stairwell. I remember having a walkie, and the head of maintenance, the guy I was close with, would tell me, hey, he came in this entrance. So I'll go to a different entrance. Hey, he went down this hallway. I'll go to a different hallway. It was like Scooby-Doo. He would go to one door, I'll go out the other for like an hour. And then he's like, all right, he just left. I was like, okay. I'm going to come down for coffee now.
Wow, dude.
So once I got out of there, things got better. I stopped going to therapy. Life was good.
Yeah.
You know, and then within the last, and then I periodically, I found a new therapist that I enjoyed. Periodically, I'd go back, you know, back and forth. After a few months, I'd be like, okay, I think I'm all right. I would stop. Now I've been going fairly consistently for maybe the last 6 or 8 months, a year, something like that. Because it's just a healthy thing to do, you know. I'm on like a once a month kind of just check in, kind of regain my bearings, kind of a thing. Like be aware of some of the self-destructive behaviors that I'm engaging in and how to handle that. It's not a cure-all, like end-all, be-all, but it's something that, you know, hopefully you can get the tools that you need to deal with some of these things and understand why you're doing the things you're doing, which then in turn helps you kind of curb those behaviors or those thought processes.
My therapist was like, yeah, you know, our goal is to have you function without going to therapy. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. You're leaving me?
Yeah, kind of like, what? And I noticed the times when like I
New anxiety unlocked.
There's times when I can't have like her and our schedules don't mesh, and she's like, she's got my therapist has 2 young kids, and she's like, I can't do it this week or something like that. And the weeks I don't go without therapy, I'm more ornery. And I'm more like I'm just more like that release I get every week is not there. So it's more like pent up. But I'm still I don't think I'm like, oh, man, you know, at first I was like, I don't need this, you know, I don't, you know, how you're going to help me. Now I feel like I can't really live without it.
Yeah.
You know, but I still am very like closed-minded. Like she wants me to work on things that I know like aren't going to work because I just know myself and I know the people who I bring up in therapy. I know like how they tick.
Yeah.
And I'm personally over the fact of like wasting my time on, I think, things that won't change just because like the older people get, including ourselves. I don't want to speak for people. For me, there are certain things I'm very much set in my ways, you know?
Absolutely.
Dealing with people like obviously I love my wife to death, but she's very much at the go with the flow. Don't really need to schedule this and that. Sometimes it has bit her in the ass. Sometimes, not all the time, but like she's obviously helped me with like this really doesn't need to be scheduled out. You know, I remember my mom telling me like when I was younger, if I had a 7:00 basketball game, like I'd be ridden with anxiety by 5:00 to get to the gym.
Yeah,
and I felt like that kind of actually made me feel like shit because like my mom had to deal with like a 7-year-old kid who like she can't help, and like it's just my anxiety. But my anxiety, and my stepdad would say, I drive you home a different way every time, and I would be riddled with anxiety because that familiarity wasn't there.
Yeah.
I had so much bad anxiety as a child. I took meds. I saw a doctor who I didn't think helped. I always joked around with my mom saying, oh, I just discovered weed and I chilled out. And my mom said, no, this doctor said like when you hit puberty, shit's going to like change in your brain.
And did it?
Yeah. And my mom's like, you have certain anxieties with things, or you have my mom thinks I just have a negative outlook on shit because I expect certain things in certain ways to be. Like I'm an asshole.
And once it's not that way,
I expect I don't know, man. Like to get real, like when my stepdad had a stroke, you were the first person I called and I cried. I wouldn't do that to anybody else because I know like you were going to fucking pick up and you were going to talk me off the ledge. Some friends, and I'm not talking shit because I'm not really friendly with them like that anymore. I just think if you are a good friend to someone, if you can be there for them.
Yeah.
If you can't and say, hey, I'm sorry, there are some like all I need to hear from a friend is like, if you ever need anything, let me know. And I know that seems like such a throwaway line for some people, but to me, like, it means the world to, like, when anyone ever says that, because it depends on who's saying it, honestly. Yeah. So I tell my mom,
it's because you're Italian.
What?
Let me know.
Oh,
it's a huge supportive family mentality thing, and it extends outside of bloodline.
So you touched on the job you had that was terrible for you, and I don't want to cut you off, but I'm kind of went through like, ever since your wife and my wife have become really good friends, my wife is like, I think, and she never tells me anything, but I guess they have intense talks.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. And they're like, you don't realize how you and Steve are so similar with stuff. I was like, is that bad or good? She's like, no, just job and debt. Like, so it's interesting hearing, and I've known that you had like that job you had before was a shit job, and now I could tell you're just like, you don't bitch about going. You don't bitch about going to your job. You're like, fuck, I got to work. You know, it's work is stressful. It's not like losing hair or appetite changing or you know, like not sleeping over a job. That's bad.
Yeah. I had to learn that. I had to learn what the difference was. It's different. Just like what I do now is not what I am meant to do, and I do truly believe that.
Yeah, so do I.
But there's a difference between going into a place that tries to break you down every single day and then just going and working and collecting a paycheck in a healthy manner.
Yeah, and you're working as hard as a job needs you to. You're not this may make me a bad employee. I don't really give a fuck, but I'm not going to do anything extra that I don't need to do, because like I'm a hard worker at my job, but if someone hits me up last minute, we need you here. No, fucking schedule it out next time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do an event 2 days out because you don't know how to schedule. I think that's
something that needs to be understood by everyone. I wish this was instilled in me earlier, that you work hard at your job, do a good job. I've always done that. That's just how I was. I was a good student in school, all that kind of stuff. But you're working for a company who operates on a bottom line, numbers-based scenario. You have to be aware of your own self-worth. Here's what I'm worth. Here's what they're paying me to do. Here's what my job responsibilities are. Anything outside of that, if I'm not being compensated in a fair way, doesn't have to be payment. Could be comp time. Could be
give me a day off afterwards.
Pizza party, anything.
Yeah.
If there's not a balance there,
a bonus at the end of the year.
You don't have to.
Yeah. I agree.
And that happened to us. One of the reasons I went with this current job is because we would get a yearly bonus based on certain extracurricular kind of things, like go get this certification, go do that training, and you get compensated for that financially at the end of the year. So it was a nice extra, like, pay for a vacation kind of paycheck. That was taken away from us. Literally, I got it once, and then it was taken away. And the way it was spoken to us was we're numbers.
Jesus
and
Christ.
Our budget's too bloated, so we're taking the bonuses away from you and then giving it to my buddies, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that kind of opened my eyes too. Is like, this is a job. I'm just a number on a page to whoever is making these decisions.
For me.
So you got to do what's right for you. I do it because I'm not the starving artist type. And I feel like that's what this topic is a lot of people kind of get stuck in this, where it's not what you want to do, but you get stuck devoting your energy to it. I'm not a starving artist. I'm never going to be a starving artist. So my plan was to work a job and work on my writing until the writing takes off. And then I'd leave the job. Yeah,
there's two, and you make actually a phenomenal point. There's two sides of the coin. You either are starving artist, freelance artist, paycheck, like not even paycheck to paycheck, but like hopefully I get money from this freelance job by the end of the month to pay bills, or you work 9 to 5, you work 40 hours a week, biweekly pay, and then in your time off, like your 5 hours, you can maybe 3 to 5 hours you can dedicate per night after work to your art. Hopefully, that you're gonna have to. That's how you have to balance it out. But yeah, I totally agree, man. I mean, like I said, these are all probably negative ways of thinking, but I really don't think my job, like, if I left tomorrow, my job doesn't give a shit about me. They're going to find another me.
And that's 99% of everyone's situation.
Everyone's situations. And it's, so I don't know how this was a problem with Jess and I a lot. She dedicated so much time and energy to her job, and it finally paid off.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there was times where her job just like was not there for her, and she had to be like, "Yo, like I'm coming in on fucking weekends. Like, what are y'all gonna do for me?"
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how I feel too. That's why I'm happy I'm at a 9 to 5 because of like the health benefits and everything I have with that, and to help me like retire down the road, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
I could not see myself. I was doing like retail and being an artist, and that killed me.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a set schedule. You're working until 10 o'clock at night. Tell me what energy I'm going to have after a 3 to 10 shift.
Yeah.
I'm only going to want to just like go home, get high, and like watch movies. Like now I get home at 6 and I'm like, okay, well, dinner's like 7 or 8. So if I have that 2 hours before dinner to like do something, and then maybe an hour and a half afterwards, like I just like that structure more.
Yeah.
But I always wonder, man, like if I fucking dedicated 40 hours a week to my art, like where the fuck would I be now, though?
Yeah.
So that's what's the struggle with it, man. Like even before I got this job and I moved back home, I didn't have a job for like 4 or 5 months. I was writing. I was doing a lot to like plan out. I was able to plan out like that Healing Heroes project, and then and then stuff. You want to say stuff gets in the way, but like this job I have now is going to help me fund a short film we're doing, and I there's more and everyone's like, well, why would you sink money into a project you don't know is going to make money? Well, I think everyone working on the set deserves to be compensated because they're really good artists, and I wish more people had that mindset. But I'll do that trend. I don't give a shit about paying Sarah, Katie. I don't, because I love them and I think they're great artists. You know, and I think that's another benefit to working a 9 to 5. What are some negatives to you, like, or if you want to piggyback off that, you can. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just want to say that, and I think that the big thing about that is the mentality. Like, say you're awake for 14 hours of the day or more, 16 hours of the day. It's all about mentality. It's all about, I have a day job. I work 40 hours a week doing something that I don't necessarily want to. That doesn't mean I'm any less of an artist or a writer than anybody else. There's a starving artist route, sure. I think there's absolute validity to the fact that like you don't have a safety net and this is the only thing you have in this world, but it's still a very small percentage of people can actually just make a living doing that kind of a stuff. There's nothing wrong with working a job and having a comfortable living and pursuing your art. There's nothing wrong with that. How many artists
start from that, though?
Exactly.
Like Jim Carrey was a fucking waiter.
You have to live.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And for me, it comes in where, and again, maybe that's a toxic masculinity thing. I think it's just being a decent person. I don't want to put the entire financial burden of our house on my wife. I mean, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's toxic masculinity. I think it's just being very level-headed. If you didn't do that, I would think you're a selfish fuck, personally.
Yeah,
because now you're relying on
I never want to be that person. I never want to be the guy who's like, there's a comedian, Pablo Francisco, who impersonated Keanu Reeves. Just the band's gonna make it. Like, I'm never gonna be that guy. Like, if my project flops, then it flops, and I'll go on to the next thing. But I'm not gonna put that burden on one person to keep me afloat to buy my Eggo waffles. You know what I mean? So the whole thing comes down to the mentality. You have to. And I use certain drugs, for example, and like caffeine,
as he points to his coffee,
to get going. You know what I mean? So I think there's a couple important things. The energy levels. You have to try to live a healthy lifestyle. You need to exercise, get enough sleep, be hydrated, because you need that mental energy and you need your brain to be sharp enough.
I do 2 out of the 3 things.
I don't do all the things all the time either, but to do that, like, and then you have to have the mentality of like, I'm checked out of my 9 to 5 job. I'm going to leave my 9 to 5 job where it lies. And my next focus is I have to get an edit done today. You go home, you have to have a space where you go. It doesn't have to actually be a physical space. You need to make those mental disconnects where you walk in your front door, everything that you brought with you stays there, and you have to transition. For me, it's going into the man cave with coffee and shutting that door, putting on music that gets me to where I need to be. And then you transition yourself into, this is the actual me. This is what I love to do. And then you get flowing. And it does work that way. If you just kind of go through the motions, because I've done that before too. You just go through the motions. I had to stay at work a little bit late. I didn't have time to get my coffee. I'm just going to blow in. I'm not going to shut the door. I'm not going to put on music. I'm just going to pound through this edit or this writing process, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
you have to help yourself.
We're going to talk more about that specifically in a later episode with you and I about writing, because I totally agree. You can't just jump in, like, and I've noticed that for me with editing is all about really just jumping in, honestly.
It's a technical
jumping point with certain things, you know, because I edit these episodes, I edit stuff for Ranting and Raving, like you kind of just have to jump in because we just start right away. Now if you're editing a short film, for me, I have that process of like, all right, let me look through the notes, good take, bad take. You know, do I want to open this up differently than I have it written in the screenplay? You know, do I want to start with a flashback? That's what goes through my mind in that. But for writing specifically, and like I said, we'll talk about this later, you can't just jump into it. Like, you know, there's days where I have a really, really bad day at work. And it's either just gotten me or it's just it wiped my ass on, like, just wiped my floor, wiped me on the floor, basically. Like, it just killed me. It destroyed me. And I'm like, oh, man, I was supposed to come home and write or this and that. Like, since February, you know, depending on when this comes out, but since February of 2022, until like May 2022, I was recording these episodes. And for a reason of, you know, Jess, my wife, is expecting in July, and I want to get all these projects done, because I have no idea when's the next time I'm going to be doing much besides Ranting and Raving, honestly.
Yeah.
So I'm dedicating a lot of my free time to recording this, and it's nice to have someone that understands that. Much like it seems like Carrie fucking understands. Like, that's your, like, once that door is closed. Yeah, I don't know if she's busting in and bothering you, but I can guarantee you she's not. You know, like she's very much like that's Steve's time.
Yeah, if I'm in there and the door's open, she knows that maybe it's just a thing. Like one of the things I do is I do script consultations for a film festival. So
what's that? Because I saw you post about that. What is that?
It's for a film festival called the Golden Script Film Festival, located in the UK.
Okay,
it's a fairly prestigious film festival.
You just read them and then you grade them, essentially?
Yeah, I read the projects, I grade it, I give feedback, and then I do an hour-long teleconference.
Wow.
Going over it, giving them ideas, that kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
It's great. I love doing it.
That's awesome.
But so if I'm just kind of tweaking feedback or whatever and the door is open, she'll know that it's okay. But if the door's closed and either I'm on a call or she can hear music but the door's closed, it's like he's trying to get into a headspace.
Yeah. That's actually going back really quick, what you said about being able to go through your door and turn, you know, your front door and turn it off. There's a TV show I haven't started yet, but I heard it's called Severance by Ben Stiller, where when you go to work, your mind shuts off what happens in your personal life, and then when you leave work, what happens at work shuts off in your personal life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you're not at work, you don't think about work. When you're not, when you're at work, you don't think about your personal life.
Yeah.
That's the premise of it, which I think is like really interesting.
It's important.
It's very, very important, because it's, I try really hard not to let I go to my job and not let the outside world affect me. There are some of my coworkers who do, and they're taken out of that. And it's like, I need you to focus right now. There's been a lot going on in my life where I can let outside things affect my job, but I'm still going hybrid. I'm only going in 2 days. So those are my days. Actually, I tell them, like, that's my time to fucking escape from my world, actually, when I get to come here and work. And then never thought, if 18-year-old Chris heard me say that, they'd be like, what are you, like, you're a fucking loser. We don't work. We don't do, because I wasn't a hard worker back then. But that's how I feel about it now, But then when I'm home on the weekend or at night, if someone hits me up about work at like 8 o'clock at night, unless if it's my boss, I'm not fucking responding.
No, absolutely
because
not.
There has to be like one. It's like that scene in Hangover. It's the weekend, dude. You do not exist when he's leaving. Like that is like how I feel. You do not exist.
Yeah.
After 5 o'clock Monday through Friday.
Yeah, you have to do that. Carrie used to be very bad about having emails pop up on her phone on the weekends, and I would see how it would affect her.
Same with Jess.
You have to turn that shit off.
Exactly.
Unless I'm on call, My email is off on my phone. I don't give anyone my personal phone number. You can't get to me if I'm not being paid to be got to.
Yes, exactly.
Straight up.
Gotcha.
This is my time.
This is gotcha journalism.
I'm paid to work 40 hours a week, and I handle those hours. Outside that, you better be paying me extra or giving me something in return.
And the film, the film artistic world is a little bit different because there's times where you and I can, for months ahead of filming, we can discuss like what we're doing.
If
but
what
that's
you
different.
do, if you're one of those rare people, if what you do from your 9 to 5 is what you want to do, God bless you. Do whatever you want to outside on your hours to further your career there. We take our time to further our career where we want it.
Because we're working, I don't want to speak for you. Well, yeah, I will speak for you. We're doing 2 jobs. We're trying to accomplish 2 jobs.
Yeah.
The 9 to 5 that we are trying to survive, and then the one that we want to create and do better for ourselves and all that. So, I mean, I've looked through the questions I have for you. You pretty much have nailed all of them, answered all of them without me asking, except one.
I'm a professional.
What would you, what would you do? Like, what would you suggest or do differently as a 9 to 5 working artist?
Like, suggest to do differently from like what I have done.
Well, if you can, moving forward, what is something that you may do differently as, like you said, like you're a 9 to 5 worker, but you are also a writer. Like, is there something that you would do like at your day job where I don't want to say like not take it as seriously, but like, and maybe we've touched on it already, but like, or is there anything you can tell the audience, so to speak, like how you navigate through doing it, than what you've already said a little bit differently?
Well, yeah, it's really a matter of mental fortitude and having a schedule for yourself, having the understanding of just because you're in a 9 to 5, it doesn't make you any less of an artist. I think that's the most overriding and most important thing I think people need to understand. Just because you work a job that's not what you love to do does not make you any less. And that's extremely important to understand. Outside of that, you're working 2 jobs. You got to understand that you need time. You need transition time from your 9 to 5. You need transition time into your creative self, and you need to be able to also rest and give yourself the proper recovery that it takes. You can't be doing 2 things at once. That's the mechanics of the biology of your brain. You cannot focus on more than one thing at a time. You can switch really fast back and forth. If you're on your phone and you're watching a movie, you may be able to switch back and forth pretty quickly, but your concentration can only take place at one thing at a time. That's how the human brain is built. So once you understand that, it's kind of the same thing with mental fortitude. You have to understand that if I'm at my day job and I'm thinking about something else, I'm not doing my day job correctly. If I'm at home and I'm thinking about the shit that went down at work, I'm not doing my creative self correctly. You really have to segment your focus.
Yeah.
And once you understand that, it becomes a little bit easier. It's definitely exhausting. It's very tiring because you're doing many things at once.
Yeah.
And the human brain is not equipped to be able to handle that.
I don't think so either. I don't know. I feel like sometimes I feel bad, like where I'll message you at work about like a question about the podcast.
And I'm not a perfect employee, and I happily answer those things. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like it's tough. And then, I mean, much like you, I'm not happy unless I've got too much to do. And then I know that negatively impacts me. So there is also you have to know when to restrain yourself from saying yes and say no a lot more than you want to or makes you feel comfortable, because that will help your focus on your other projects. Like, I knew there was this one big thing I should be focusing on, and instead, like, whatever it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was like, no, I'm gonna do like 18 interviews, I'm gonna do different job interviews, I'm gonna do all kinds of freelance work, and every single day I had 4 or 5 things to do after I got home from work, and it was like, it crushed me. I was like, this is way too much. What am I doing? Like, what should I be focusing on? And once you understand what you should be doing, just say no. It's okay to say no. If your job wants you to come in on the weekends, make sure you get compensated for that. And if that compensation matches your logistics, if you're okay with that, then go ahead and do it. If it doesn't, say no. They're not going to fire you. Just understand what you want from this life, from this world, from your 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And if it doesn't match that, or it's negatively impacting you, like me with that one job, get out. There's other jobs. They'll replace you very, very quickly, much more quickly than you may think.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter. It only matters if you allow it to matter. That's really what it is.
That happened at my job. Someone left and they were replaced rather quickly, and they were like, damn.
It's just the wheel keeps turning. That's what it is. There's a lady at our job who's been there for 20-something years, and she's retiring. They found her replacement in 2 weeks, starting in another 2 weeks, and the world will keep turning.
That's it. Yeah, that's
you. Not to be negative, but it's your job.
Not,
you don't matter.
It's not negative. I don't
make it matter for you. If your job doesn't matter for you, don't give them any extra of your mental puzzle pieces. It doesn't make a difference for them, but it makes a huge difference on you.
Yeah. I don't think that's negative at all. That's my mentality. And I feel like once I either subconsciously told myself that or I've been saying it out loud, like maybe I'm a bad employee because I really just don't like give a fuck about my job outside of Monday through Friday. I just really like when there's like times where there's like holiday parties or there's parties on a Friday night, I don't even really want to go because it's like, it's a Friday night, dude. But then I end up going and I end up enjoying it because unfortunately, like, yes, all you have to talk about is job. Or like if I hang out with coworkers outside of work sometimes, there are times where I'm talking about where all we have to talk about is work because that's all we know. But eventually it gets better. But yeah, I put zero stake into like this job is the best and I'm gonna die for it. No, because they don't care about you. I'm not, I'll be very candid. When I told them about my stepdad and his stroke, like a few people gave a fuck. And I was out for 2 days and the job obviously kept going, but like my boss, she asked me about him, a few of my coworkers, but like the higher ups didn't know, probably didn't give a fuck. Like then like no one cared. Like, but then I can't really sit there and say that because when people have birthdays or when I was getting married in June, like they threw us a little like party and cake. Like, so like there's flip sides to that and they show it that way. But like you keep saying, at the end of the day, like the world keeps turning. So you got to be at a job that is bearable for you. And if it is not bearable for you, if you lose sleep, weight loss or weight gain or hair, you lose hair or all of that, or you become very fucking testy outside of work or at work. Like I knew I hated jobs when I was miserable at work because I'm the best faker at work anyone can be. But when I'm starting to show my true colors at work, then I'm like, ooh, I don't really like this fucking job anymore. Yeah. That's a sign. And I know you made a joke about it, but you avoiding your boss, I've been at those jobs. I would be like, this fucking person's on schedule today, motherfucker. Like I'd get pissed. Like that's at the time you don't think about, but you go back and you're like, that is a sign of a toxic fucking job. Yeah, you cannot.
It's all
be
about your self-worth.
Yes,
it's all about your self-worth. They need you as much as you need them. And understand that it's a symbiotic relationship. Yeah. In that way,
it ain't never going to be closer, like unless if you and I start a company.
And they're never going to be. You're never going to be more grateful than they are, and vice versa. And you got to understand that you don't go there because you just want to, right? You go there because you get paid.
You need to.
They have you there because they pay you to be there, and understand this is a business arrangement.
Exactly.
And once you understand that,
it's like the hooker and the
there's interpersonal things going on. Absolutely, I love my coworkers; they're amazing people. Understand
that's good for you.
Everyone's there for a reason. If nobody was getting paid, we wouldn't be there.
I know.
And once you understand that, it's a lot easier to kind of segment your emotional energy.
That'd be like winning the lottery and being like, you know what? I'm going to go work now. Fuck that. I'm going to live on a boat for 7 months. Like, come on.
I understand needing to be a cog in the wheel, but I would love to be one of those people that like failed the lottery life. Like, give me a shot, bro.
No, but you made a good point. Like, I need to be extremely busy or I feel like my self-worth is garbage.
Yeah. And the thing is, and we going back to therapy, like, I understand that. I understand I do that. I understand that's my tendency.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I don't do it anymore.
I agree.
That's the whole thing about therapy and why it's a good thing, because it's an exercise. Just because I understand why I do the things I do doesn't mean I stop doing them.
Exactly.
It's just a more healthy approach. Like, that week, I didn't have panic attacks, but it was bothering me because I would be doing things personally that should have been a fun time, and I remember just hyper fixating on what I had to do next and realizing like I can't do this to myself again. So since then, I have not scheduled myself like that.
That's
and
good.
I've taken it time to schedule things, or I've, you know, kind of spaced myself out a little bit because I remember how it made me feel when I was like, no, I've got 2 interviews tonight. I've got 2 things to do tomorrow.
You apologized to me for like, dude, as much as I would like to direct like my first film or you apologize and you're like, I hope you understand. And I want you to know on the record that like, you don't ever have to say, I hope you understand. Cause I do get it. Like, and I'm never going to get mad because like you're actually being self-aware. And I read that. I was like, Steve's more self-aware than I am. Like, I'm running myself ragged.
That was just one of those when it rains it pours scenarios. That was during that week, and you're like, by the way, here's when we're gonna do this. And I was like, I don't think I can do a single other thing. I knew there was time between it, but for doing this kind of thing, there's preparation involved and there's dedication, especially as like a director. And I just knew I didn't have it in me to do it.
Yeah.
So I owed it to you to say something. And you know what? I was scared of telling you that. And you know what? You accepted me completely for that. That's the other thing, is you shouldn't be afraid to just be honest and be truthful with everyone you're involved with. There might be fallout in certain situations. But I know I've experienced that personally.
Same, yeah.
But you either have to be true to yourself or true to someone else. And if you're true to only someone else, it's never going to blow back on you in a good way. Mm-hmm. You have to be yourself. There's give and take in certain scenarios. You've told me that too with like our podcast. You said like, dude, I just can't do it right now. And I think a lot of things happen for a reason. Certain things have happened for a reason. So I understood it, but I'm not, if someone's trying to, I'll call this person out, and I'm not being rude at all. I shouldn't say call out. Name names.
No,
names.
Like Jess Vasquez, she said that she didn't think that she was worthy of being on this podcast because now she's only doing film as a hobby and not as a career. She's like, there was a time in my life where I did film all the time, but now it's just a hobby.
Right.
And I asked her to be on the podcast, and she initially said, I don't want to be. And then she reached out and said, no, I actually think talking about what I'm going through would be very beneficial.
Yeah.
And I completely agreed with her. I was like, I don't know. I'm not going to be upset that like you think your movies are a hobby. Like, that's a cool hobby to have. I'm trying really hard.
That goes back to the self-worth thing.
Yeah, I'm trying really hard to make it a career.
Dedicated into the film career. And
now she's found a different avenue. Because
she couldn't make a paycheck doing it, she thought that made her feel less than.
Exactly.
And that's not true.
It's not, because she is, like I said, she was, we mentioned her earlier in the podcast where she went to Ramapo, and she like, her and Jess Arena are really good at what they do. And, I think Jess Vasquez now is like, she's giving back to the community in Philadelphia. I see on her Instagram, like, where she's making food for the homeless. Like, that's more
making a real impact.
Yeah, they're making a bigger impact than I ever will.
100%.
So like, you can't.
Yeah, you're a giant piece of shit.
I'm making movies because I'm making movies where I'm writing and starring in them because I don't want to audition anymore. No, but no, it's and I told my wife Jess this, and Jess is like, yo, Chris, you don't realize like everyone looks at themselves the way you look at yourself. Like, I look at myself as a really big piece of garbage, and Jess is like, everyone does too. Everyone is self-conscious.
I'm the most negative person I know to myself, and that has to change.
But then you're probably the most positive person about other people around you, right?
Correct.
You give everyone else their flowers. And then you look at your end table where you have 4 fucking screenplays there, and you're like, this is all trash. Meanwhile, I have one feature from 2012 I had to write because of college, and I'm like, I've delayed writing Little Did You Know as a feature because I'm making excuses. And so, everyone's...
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's...
It's bad. Everyone's their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
It's an old saying, but it is a very true saying. Like... Just even if you want like a dessert, and we can go like, I'm a giant piece of shit because I'm gonna have dessert. It's like, no, you're allowed to have some sugar.
I've been eating like garbage the last few weeks, honestly, and I'm like, Jess, I can't remember the last.
I saw a wedding photo of myself, and I was like, holy shit.
Were you what?
I'm like a whole other person now, the giant.
Yeah,
I'm
dude. There's times where I look at like Kyle.
I blame the shutdown. The shutdown ended for me 2 years ago. It's not the shutdown, bro.
Yeah, Kyle.
Maybe 3 years ago by the time this podcast comes out. Like, the pandemic, not an excuse anymore.
Yeah, I know.
It was an excuse for literally 2 months.
Getting Wendy's because I've been stuck inside the house all day.
Sign off, have a beer and some fucking cheesecake you ordered for $70 from DoorDash. But now that it unlearned fucking 30 years worth of self-control.
Yeah, dude, I have zero self-control. There's all these memes I always see, like you or Carrie, like where it's like you do the bare minimum. Well, I'm going to treat myself now. Like 15 minutes of work, you take a 3-hour break. That's me to a fucking T, dude. Or I'm like, oh man, today's been rough. You know, I think I owe myself.
That's probably the biggest thing I still have to work on is being positive to myself.
Yeah.
Because it's never possible.
But like my mom would always say, like going out to eat was a treat. Now you motherfuckers do it because you're bored on a Tuesday. I was like, don't hate the player.
Yeah,
hate the game.
It's changed.
But it has. Well, my mom was like, it was a treat. I was like, yeah, well I'm treating myself because I survived Monday.
But also, you gonna tell me that if 30 years ago our
all
parents
was around,
had a smartphone with an app that you could order a chicken fried cheesesteak and you didn't have to interact with anyone and you got it in 30 minutes, that you wouldn't do it? All that shit was automatic, just linked to your credit cards, which, by the way, goes through your online accounts that are automatically paid. You're not going to dip in more than once a week.
That is true.
Bullshit.
Yeah. You have no self-control. You smoked while you were pregnant.
My parents didn't go out 3 times a week because they had to get in the car. They had to drive a half an hour, pay with cash or check. Writing checks a huge pain in the ass.
But also at the same time,
make sure the credit was in the account. Make sure your checkbook was balanced because you had to write it by pencil. And make sure you had the money because it was a hassle.
So a meal was 25 cents. I find a quarter under my couch. I throw it out. Like a meal costed a dime, like when my dad was my age. So I don't want to hear it either, you know. Yeah. But no, but yeah, no.
The self-destructive tendencies, the negative attitudes, that's all part of how you handle working a 9 to 5 and being creative. You have to be your own best
as a
friend.
host. Thank you, Steve, for saving me. Yeah,
you have to
right.
be your own best friend. You have to understand.
You're saying you have to.
Your self-worth
yes.
has to be more than what you do. I don't care if it is what you want to do. If I made a living writing screenplays, which is the end goal for me, that doesn't mean if I stop doing that, I'm any less. And I have to understand that. And anyone who has the same thing that they're going through, you have to understand you have a worth as a person. Even if you do nothing, you sit on the couch, you maybe held the door open for somebody today. You maybe helped the old lady carry her groceries. Yeah. You're still giving in a positive way to this universe. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I've had a really positive interaction with a new neighbor the other night. And
by hitting your ceiling with a broom and telling him to keep it down.
I was putting a box in my car. He's like, "Oh, moving out?" I was like, "No, it's for storage." And he's like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm moving in. This is my first car, my first apartment by myself." Like, he was so fucking jazzed up about life. And I came back in and just was like, "Why the fuck are you smiling?" Like, what just happened? I was like, I just met a neighbor who actually talked to me, and it's very, that's very new and very different for me. Like our neighbors across the hall talk, but it's not like how it used to be, man.
That's huge. That energy is infectious. That energy is needed to be in all our lives.
Yeah.
Carrie would make fun of me for it, but so again, whenever this comes out or whatever, right now I've been watching all the Jackass movies.
Yeah.
And Carrie's like, why do you just watch? They're just like kicking themselves in the balls. Like, why is that fun? And it's like, the energy, the camaraderie amongst friends, the just fucking around because you want to and laughing. That energy.
I miss that because it's a very younger person.
I didn't realize how much I missed it.
It's a very younger person thing.
I watched the newest Jackass because I was like, I wonder how this is going to compare now that they're in their 50s and doing this stuff. And what I didn't realize was I missed the energy that they still had. So I went back and I watched the old ones and I was like, fuck, like this energy. Not that I would ever like shit on a table and like, whatever.
Yeah.
But I would never eat a piss snow cone on but like the energy, the camaraderie, the just fucking around when you were young, like that is such a thing that you still need to have in your life. It's so important.
Yeah.
People get to be such drones getting locked into the work week because it does take so much of your mental energy. You have to remember who you are.
There's this one.
So find something that makes you happy aside from working.
Yeah.
If it like
could
me,
be anything.
My favorite thing to do is waking up a little late on a Saturday, having waffles and coffee and watching something I enjoy. Find something that helps you.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just rewatching Jackass constantly because it makes me feel good and it reminds me of the energy I used to have. And that helps.
Yeah.
It really does. It reminds you, like, yeah, you're still that same person inside. Like, I didn't know if I would enjoy the new Jackass as much as I thought I would.
Yeah.
And I don't really laugh out loud by myself a lot of times. I was doing that watching these movies because I'm like, I'm still in here. Like, the real me is still in here. And
I
that's
laugh out
important
loud
to
a
realize.
lot. I'm watching that show Murderville with Will Arnett.
Oh, Will Arnett, yeah.
And it's just like the best episode so far is Marshawn Lynch, dude. But Will Arnett breaks, and it's like it's stupid. Like
you make fun of me, but that's why I love TikTok so much. I literally watched like a 5-minute compilation last night of people trying to do stunts and failing, and I get a kick out of that, and I go like,
well, you're on your Jackass
this hasn't
kick.
changed. Like this is me at 10.
Yeah.
And now at 32 years I still enjoy
there's little things
watching
like,
that shit.
I keep telling like Jess, because like our friend, I went to go visit our friend Charlie like a while ago, and him and his girlfriend are like watching Schitt's Creek, and I'm like, oh dude, like Chris Elliott is so fun. Everyone who's seen Schitt's Creek hates Chris Elliott. I was like, but he is the same as he is in Schitt's Creek as he is in Scary Movie 2, as he is in everything he's been. Like
Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah, there's all these scenes where he's like Eugene Levy's character always talks about how his old video store like used to be really good, but they ended up going bankrupt. He's like, when I owned Rose Video, and Chris Elliott's just like, ugh, like out loud. Like I told Charlie, like that's my favorite type of humor, or like just the stupidity is my favorite type of humor. Like when Chris Elliott's character in Schitt's Creek finds out he's going to have another baby, he's like, champagne for everyone. And his wife's like, I can't. He's like, oh, yeah, you're right. You're driving. Not that she's pregnant. It's just the stupidity and like those type of jokes get me like Joey from Friends, Kramer from Seinfeld. The lack of, I guess, knowing like little things like, yeah, why don't we just tear all this down, open up this place. You can't tear this down. This is load-bearing walls, Jerry. Like, just being so, like, idiotic. So I get where you're coming at. Like, you're coming from, like, things that just make you laugh because of it just reminds you of something.
Energy.
And you just need that. That's why I rewatch Seinfeld and Friends, because it brings me back to a time.
Yes.
And I understand it more. And it's funny. It is just fucking hilarious.
And I think that also goes back to the therapy thing. It's like, if you understand why you watch the things or what you enjoy or whatever, like it's important to understand where you're coming from. Like my favorite kind of humor is self-deprecating humor because that's what I've always used, because I'm an insecure person. So I turn that around to be humorous.
Exactly.
If I say I have a small dick, no one else can look at me and go, you have a small dick. I go, like, I just said that joke. Like that kind of thing has always been what I've used. But the thing is, like, maybe I never really understood where that was coming from. Understand that it's because of your insecurities. You like the self-deprecating humor because it's honest and it's personal and it means something, and that's why you use it that way. I understand that now. Maybe I didn't when I was 21 years old.
My dad said that to me when I was young. He's like, if you really want to like throw these motherfuckers off, like just joke about yourself first. Yeah. He's like, make fun of your last name first if they're making fun of your last name, because what else?
The first time I tried stand-up, that was my first joke.
Yeah, like
I was like, let's address the elephant in the room. He's got the microphone. Everyone laughed immediately. As soon as I can make anyone laugh, everything comes down for me. All my anxieties, everything, because I go like, I got him. I can be me, like, and then it just opens up the floodgates. But that's me. That's how I operate. Yeah. For you to find your own thing, like whatever makes you laugh and helps you be comfortable, understand that it's okay to do that.
Like I said about my neighbor, like I used to be very, like I'll go to fucking, I'm going grocery shopping and I'll be like, I'll ask them like, how's your day going? And half the time they're like, thank you for asking. And half the time they're like, yeah. So I've stopped, and I look at my dad and he can like have a conversation with a wall. He could talk to anybody. I've tried doing that and I don't get the response. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I'm just turning into my dad who just talks to anyone now. Like, I don't want to be like, so I'm very like in my, like I'm now very like short answered on my phone. If someone else starts talking, I let people initiate first because I'm tired of initiating it and getting rejected.
I think a big part of also the worry of all of this is if you're an empathetic person. Like I'm an empath, so I always think about how what I do affects other people, and it's fucking exhausting. That's a huge part of that too. It's like you worry about that because you're like, well, I don't want to inconvenience them. Like if they don't want me to talk to them, I don't want to talk to them.
Just you're worried about whatever like you inconveniencing people.
And that's a healthy thing because you understand. It's a golden rule kind of a thing.
Yeah.
You understand other people also have
but
feelings.
I always think I'm inconveniencing literally everyone, though. But is that it?
I think it's a combination of things. I think you're being empathetic, and I also think you just
Crazy.
your self-worth, like on the inside.
Yeah.
But that's a huge part of it. Like, it's one thing to be empathetic, but it's another thing to not think you have any value.
Yeah.
I deal with that all the time, and I know I deal with that, but it's still something that you have to like keep working on. I have value, even though I don't think I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. This is probably like the second longest podcast, so I knew we could probably be talking for
I
hours.
meant to ask how long you usually
I
take
don't really
these things.
I recorded someone for 2 hours. Most people have been 40. I've done a lot of virtual. They've been like 45 minutes to an hour. In person's a lot better, but we do have a lot more to talk about. So in other episodes, but man, this has been.
Plus, you owe me
great.
lunch.
I do owe you lunch. Yeah, think about what you want to eat, motherfucker. I owe you and my wife lunch. That makes no sense. I should only owe one of you lunch.
I'll take the surf and
turf. Which would be you. But no, man.
Lagavulin bourbon.
I appreciate you coming on, man.
I'm happy to be here.
You know, I've been asking people if they want to plug stuff. We don't really have to. I know that, I interviewed Nathan. He's like, this really isn't about me. It's for to help people out. You said the same thing too. But I will just say, like, if you want to hear Steve and I on a different platform or different level that is a lot more funnier, please just visit Ranting and Raving Podcast. Other than that, follow Steve on Instagram, Sandwich Hanisch. He's always posting things about his writing and whatnot, but
mostly memes. I should just turn my page into a meme page.
You should. I do appreciate you coming on, and we have a lot more to talk about. But yeah,
my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
All right, guys. Until next time, thanks. Once again, this is Where Is My Mind, a podcast about mental health and the arts. I'm host and producer of the podcast, Christopher Orangeo. All episodes will be available on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, and Amazon Music. Once again, this is Chris Orangeo, and thank you for supporting.